People don't do what you expect, people do what you inspect. Hi, this is Jim Gibson with Business Sense Podcast. Thank you for joining me today. I want to talk to you a little bit about holding people accountable. In the last podcast, we talked about you taking responsibility for actions. Now we're going to talk about another business principle, another leadership principle, and that's holding people accountable. And I'm going to tell you why this is good. It's good for you. It's good for your people. It's good for the people that work for you. Hold people accountable. I'll give you a little story. When I was a second lieutenant and I became a platoon commander, communications platoon commander, I had about 25, 30 Marines, technicians. They were all technicians of some sort. And so my first day I showed up, I started talking to them and everything else, and they were good guys, you know. I just wanted to be their buddy, their friend. A second lieutenant, I was still learning about what the Marine Corps was about. I was still learning about what management is about, what leadership is about. I was still learning all those techniques, how to deal with people. And this was the first time, basically, that I was in charge of people. So I had to learn. And so I sat there with all the people, and we talked about, you know, we're going to have formation each day at 7:30 in the morning. And I expect everyone to be there, but I understand sometimes if you're late. So if you're going to be late, I'm going to give you 3 chances on being late before I actually take action, before I bring charges against you for unauthorized absence, UA. And I thought just it was kindness, and I was showing, you know, compassion on my people, and I was going to help them out and everything else. Well, the opposite happened. Every person in that platoon racked up 3 latenesses. And you know what happened? Every time I had people late and I had to have a movement of some sort, I had to put people on trucks to take them somewhere, or I had to send them over to the armory to clean weapons or the other additional services that we had to perform as a platoon, I would be invited to have a nice little chit-chat with the colonel. And I would sit there and I would hear the colonel chew me out, and I would give all the excuses in the world. Well, you know, Lance Corporal Smith, why, he forgot to plug in his clock. And, you know, Sergeant Thomas, why, he got a flat on the way to work. And you know something? After going up to see the colonel and knowing that he was not happy with me at all, I thought, why am I doing this? Why am I causing stress in my life? And these people are screwing around. So it didn't take long till I changed the program. And one of the things I said was, I stood in front of everyone at a formation and I said, okay, new rules. There is no more lateness. You're expected to be here at 7:30 in the morning. And if you're here at 7:31, I will write up a UA charge against you, unauthorized absence. And the only excuse for not being here is if you died. Then God has discharged you from the Marine Corps, and you are no longer under my authority. And one of the things I explained to the staff NCOs that worked in that platoon, I said, you know, I always found it curious. I asked my dad one time, how come, Dad, you always leave an hour early for work? You're only paid for 8 hours, but somehow you get there at least a half hour ahead of time. And he said to me, you know, son, once in a while you get flats. And you got to relieve someone else, because this was shift work. So there was always someone there at that facility. And he said, you know, you got to relieve people, and they don't appreciate it when you're a half hour late. And it messes up your shift because you don't get all the details from the person before they leave. So I make sure I leave an hour ahead of time to get to work. So I explained that to the staff NCOs and also to the enlisted people. And I said, don't be late. I don't care about your alarm clock. That's your problem. Don't come to me and say your alarm clock didn't work. I can't control your alarm clock. Don't tell me you got a flat on the way. I can't control your tire or the hole that's in your tire. But I'm telling you this, you figure out how to get here every single day at 7:30. And if you show up at 7:31, you're going to be unauthorized absence, and I'm going to hold you accountable. And you know what happened? Things turned around. No one was late anymore. And I learned a lesson that day. I am not their buddy. It's nice to be friendly, don't get me wrong, but I am not their buddy. Now, I joined another unit. I got transferred to another unit, and the officer before me was relieved of duty because of cause. And this was a rowdy bunch of people. and I was not interested in becoming their buddy. So, of course, I went through the same thing. Formation's at 7:30. If you're not here at 7:30, you better be dead, or I'm going to bring charges against you. If you died, then God has discharged you from my Marine Corps. So, therefore, you no longer have to show up, and you don't need to worry about being charged with UA. But I don't care about your wife beating you up. That actually happened one time. A little Lance Corporal got beat up by his wife. Unbelievable. I don't care about the flats. I don't care if you had to borrow a bike and get here. You get here at 7:30. So my advice to you is you better get here long before 7:30, because if you're not here at 7:30, I'm going to bring charges against you. And sure enough, some people tried me on it, and I brought charges against them. And it was really a bad unit because the officer before me was so lackadaisical, so unprofessional, that these people had absolutely no discipline, and I had a lot to get done. This was a big unit. It's over 100 people. And they were all technicians. It was all equipment that had to be maintained and managed and everything else. And this went on for a while. I made sure, I told them if they weren't prepared for inspections, that they would be charged. And I know this sounds kind of bad, doesn't it? It sounds kind of rough, but it's not. I'll tell you the reason. I'll tell you what happened. I remember walking out into the warehouse, and we had a person called a pubs clerk. Now, being a pubs clerk in a technical unit, 100 people, millions of dollars worth of equipment, satellite equipment, heavy construction equipment, put up telephone poles, MUX equipment, switching equipment, all that other stuff. You had a lot of technical publications. Not like today. I'm sure it's all on the computer today. But back then you had a manual for each and every piece of equipment you had. And so I walked over to the pubs clerk, and I think he was a Lance Corporal PSC. He was not high in the ranks. He was a junior enlisted guy. And I started inspecting his pubs. Now, one of the things about these publications was that the Marine Corps would come out with changes that had to happen to the equipment. We had to add a little part here or a bolt there or something like that. And if you did that, you had to take that old page out of the manual, and you had to put the new page in the manual. It was a three ring binder type of manual. And then you had a note on the front of the manual that you did that. And let me tell you, that was a tedious job. No one wanted to be pubs clerk. That was boring. It was tedious. It was horrible. So you know what I did? I looked at what he was doing, and he was doing a fantastic job. He was great at what he was doing. This was fantastic. And so I said to him, Lance Corporal, you're doing fantastic. I am impressed. I am really impressed. And I said it loud enough so everybody in that room heard me. Everybody in that warehouse heard me. And I said, Lance Corporal, go get your sergeant. I want to talk to your sergeant. And the sergeant showed up. And I said, Sergeant, you must be a genius to have motivated this Lance Corporal to do such a great job in pubs clerk. Again, that was a tough job. Boring. I would have hated the job. I would have hated life if I had to do that job. And then I said, Sergeant, you go get your staff NCO and bring him over here. And I said, Staff Sergeant, you did such a fantastic job motivating and managing this sergeant and this Lance Corporal to do such a fabulous job. I tell you what, guys, this is what I'm going to do. All three of you. Next time it's up for promotion, next time you get your pros and con marks, they were the marks that you would get in the Marine Corps, and if you got high enough, you'd get promoted. I say, you remind me about today, because I'm going to do everything in my power to get you promoted. And I said, because you guys obviously have been working hard at this, and you obviously must be geniuses in management and in leadership. And I am impressed. I am really impressed. And I said, I am so impressed that I'm going to give you a 96. Now, 96 meant you got Friday off, Saturday off, Sunday off, and Monday off. So you left Thursday night, didn't come back till Tuesday morning. And I had the authority to do that at that time. And I tell you what, man, their eyes lit up. They were so proud of what they did. And everyone paid attention in that warehouse. They heard everything I said. And the morale and the motivation and the discipline in that unit turned around that day. So it's not good enough just to hold people accountable for the bad things. You got to hold people accountable for the good stuff. But you got to hold people accountable, because if you don't hold people accountable, you know what they think? Well, the boss doesn't care about this. It must not be important because he never comes down and checks to see if I'm doing the job right. He never comes down and supervises me. He never tells me how I can do better. He never holds me accountable when I screw up. I just say, hey, I'm sorry. So your job as a manager, your job as a business owner, if you have employees, is hold your people accountable for good and bad. You know, one of the biggest mistakes I think I've made over the years is I was too slow in firing people. I got lazy. You know, I didn't have a boss yelling at me or praising me for a job well done. So I got lazy. And if I had to do over again, I would have fired a lot more people. You know, there's people in your organization that you've spoken to over and over and over again, and they're just blowing you off, man. And you're spending all this time, and I realized that was one of my problems back then in that unit. I was spending 90% of my time with the dirtballs, the lowlife, the guys that did not want to do anything. They just wanted to get out of the Marine Corps, and they wanted to do the minimum possible, and they wanted to get under the line, you know? They just wanted to hide from work. Well, I realized that when I was spending 90% of my time with these people, trying to recuperate them, trying to make them better, trying to motivate them. But I realized at that point that if I would have spent the same amount of time with the good people, making sure they're getting promoted, making sure they're getting recognition, making sure they're being treated with respect because they're doing their job and they're putting their heart into their job. I said that day, I remember, after praising that little Lance Corporal for doing such a fantastic job. I hope he made a career out of the Marine Corps. He was a great guy. And so was his NCO and his staff NCO. I hope they made careers. I decided I would spend my time with the good people, that I would encourage them, that I would mentor them, that I would show them how to do a better job. And in civilian life, I think I really blew it a lot of times because it just got too hard to fire a technician that would take a year or two to train a new one, and I'd have to hire 3 people to keep one. And it's just a bad business model, and we'll talk about that on another podcast, how to design your business model so it works. You know, if it takes 2 years to train someone, you got to hire 3 people because 2 of them are going to quit in 2 years. You spend a lot of money, a lot of time, and everything else. But if you use this approach, you get rid of the people you know you need to get rid of. You're just being lazy. Get rid of them. It's not like you're killing them. It's not like they're never going to get another job somewhere else. You might be helping them, realizing that, hey, someone's going to hold me accountable for this. And, of course, at the same time, recognizing those individuals that really put out the extra effort and they do things without excuses. You know something? Sometimes all you get is excuses from people. And remember in the last podcast I talked about that. Don't ever give excuses. Accept responsibility for what you're doing. But it goes 2 ways also. It means not only accept responsibility from someone who's doing a great job, you know, encouraging them to do better, but also holding people accountable that aren't doing such a great job. And what I found out working with that unit, that 100-plus technician unit, Marine Corps unit, was I learned that if you hold people accountable, they like that. They like to be told that they did a good job. They like to be told that someone has paid attention to what they're doing because what they're doing is valuable. What they're doing is important. It makes them feel like they're important. And at the same time, when people are screwing up and are doing it mostly on purpose, they also know that if you don't hold them accountable, then you're not a leader. You're just a whoosh. You know? You're not doing anything. So always remember, spend the majority of your time with good people, encouraging them, mentoring them, helping them get ahead in life. The people, the doers, the ones that want to do things. And spend the minimum amount of time of people who need to be fired. And don't be lazy. If you tried and you've given a reasonable time to help someone succeed at the job they have that you've given them, then it's time for them to go. You're not hurting them. They'll find a job that they like or whatever else. And you know, your main job is to make sure that your business is profitable. Your main job is to support your boss and to make sure that business is profitable. Thank you for listening to my little story today. I learned a lot back then. I wish I would have kept on applying those principles throughout my business career. But I learned a lot in the Marine Corps. I learned a lot about holding people accountable, holding myself accountable. Stop with the whining. Stop with the excuses. Take responsibility, as I said in the last one. You got a possibility out there. You see a vacuum in leadership. Don't wait for someone to assign you that job. Ask to do it. If you can do the job, do it. Take as much responsibility as you can on yourself. Because that's how you're going to get ahead, and that's how you're going to be profitable. That's how you're going to be a great manager. And if you're an owner of a business, then don't waste your time with dirtballs that are just blowing you off, that are doing the minimum amount of work. Maybe they're good people that are just not smart enough to do the job. We're not helping them. You're really not helping them. So always reward the great people that are doing a great job and hold everyone accountable. I always hear business leaders and managers always talking about that they want to build a team. They want to motivate people. They want people to have, the esprit de corps and think as a group. Well, this is how you do it, man. This is how you do it. You hold people accountable for good and also for bad. Because that communicates to them that they're important, because what they're doing is important, and they know their boss is paying attention and is thankful for what they do. Again, this is Jim Gibson with Business Sense Podcast. Thank you for listening today.